So we have the long-awaited actual content for New World, at least repeatable content. By that I mean it's not like one-time dungeon content. You don't have like a new mode that comes out that someone plays for a week and then stops playing. Like there's pretty big updates to content that people were consistently playing, which I prefer personally, but I know some people don't prefer and they don't view this as content. But let's get into it. I would say a decent amount of this stuff is just objectively content though. So this is all coming out in a PTR that is releasing tomorrow on the 15th. There's repeatable content out. Yeah, OPR got a really big update. Uh, for the PTR, we have new artifacts. There's this little, what do you call it, like kind of raid like thing that they're adding. Main story is completely completed, so it's good for new players now. They're kind of setting up for that like really big May comeback if they do go with that. We have controller support, but keybinds aren't a bindable for every single thing. So this is like, again, probably leading up to like a May. I think it got delayed to June, a release where people are considering that they're probably going to release the game to Xbox and PS4. At least that's the anticipation. You have upgraded combat and animation stuff, weapon balance stuff. We have mounts and OPR, which is relatively minor. I think the OPR changes are bigger. A bunch of bug fixes, which are really impactful. Season 5, track rewards, cooking skill changes, which if you are behind on the cooking meta, you can make a decent amount of gold off of that right now as well. But I want to like start talking about the PvP stuff a bit. We already kind of went through every single artifact. The only thing that's noteworthy here is Venom effectively got buffed significantly. Originally, when I looked at this, I think I rated it a 1 out of 5. I would up that to be a 2 to 3 out of 5 now because Bo's heavy attacks are apparently going to be coded as heavy attacks, not light attacks, which means your heavy attacks can do consistent more damage with Venom. With the combat rework, I would expect the heavy attacks to feel a little bit better because they've talked about that a bit as well. Did they say what time the PTR goes live? They did not. It typically goes live about 9 to 10 a.m. PST is like what I typically see. So it's like sometime early tomorrow morning for PST players. For EST players, you're looking at mid to late afternoon. For EU players, you're looking basically at some point during the night. It's scary to think about a healer survivability with the new amulet plus damage nurse for every weight class. Okay, there are some changes with that too, but we want to get in that later where the amulet did get nerfed, which is really important to get into. We're about to get into it actually. So we already talked about most of these artifacts, but yeah, the amulet, this said 2 seconds yesterday. It says 1 second today. So the amulet has either is 2 seconds and they just lied with these notes, or it's actually 1 second and they lied with yesterday's notes. I'm more inclined to think that they saw the community feedback and they're like, let's just decrease that to 1 second, because that seems like it could be pretty good considering Hatchet is only half a second. This is still going to be run on every single healer class. I think it's mandatory for healers, but other classes, I think it's less mandatory when it's at 1 second. It's still really good to have Purify and Stam Recovery on the same piece though, which is going to be with this amulet. You could throw health on there, you could throw protection on there. I'm more inclined to think that people will throw protection on there if they're running like a medium setup, and then they're gonna throw the new health artifact on for their heavy legs, which is really interesting, where you can throw on Ironheart, steady foundry when not in heavy loadout, get 20% more health. Noteworthy, you can't use this in light again because this is heavy legs and you can't do heavy legs in a light class. What are your thoughts on Blood Drinker? Kind of mid. I think it's good for solo queue stuff right now, but it does not seem super viable in PvP because it doesn't work off of dots. It works off one-time AoE effects, so it's good for things like Path of Destiny, but you're already getting healed so much from that, I don't really see the purpose. And also, a Path of Destiny's heal, even though it's incoming and you're hitting a player, and then that player is giving you health, you would think that would be a lifesteal effect. It's actually coded as just a heal effect, so it's not boosted by that 25% bonus or whatever it is on that ring, and instead it's boosted by Ankh. So Ankh is still better for those cases, even though Blood Drinker would make more sense for that. So upgraded combat and animation system. We saw a little bit of this. Basically, things that weren't tracking before are tracking. So like one thing that comes into mind on the live patch is skewer. If you've used Spear and you use skewer, you know that once you press that button, it is not moving anywhere. You're not going to track anyone. Now it like homes on people from what the devs showed with their update video. So it seems like a lot better, and that's going to be applying to things across the board. Anything that felt clunky, I imagine, will be better. Basically, the code change that they talked about here is they went from like a system where they couldn't really log things super effectively. They couldn't see what was going wrong because it was kind of hidden behind a quote unquote black box. It was out of the dev's control. Now they kind of coded everything here. They're able to put logs in place. They're able to actually track when stuff goes right, goes wrong. So they're going to be able to tune this over time as well. So this is a really big plus for the near future and the long term as well. I think this is a really, really big change that's definitely slept on by a lot of people. Outpost Rush Cavalry mounts are now available in Outpost Rush. Noteworthy, if you do not have the expansion, you're going to feel even worse because you're not going to be able to keep up with people in Outpost Rush. Even though you are going to be carried to 675 gear score, you're not going to be slower than people as well. I think this is overall like a good balance because a lot of people are complaining about how much time it takes to get back from respawn. With a mount, they had this on the PTR previously. It felt a lot better just to get back from respawn and get into the action. And with the up and coming, what we're going to talk about, the OPR changes, you are going to be able to not be kind of countered as much by PvEers. I think you're going to be able to actually kind of do more with those mounts and navigate around the map to various objectives. So I think it's actually, this is like a relatively good change. Some people disagree on this and they think that this is like a kind of a bad thing. The other noteworthy thing about this is if you're running a class that typically runs away from builds, you're not going to be able to run away from builds if you can't put on a mount, but other people could put on a mount to chase you because you're not consistently hitting them. But with the other change that is happening to kind of the free form movement, kind of hopping around here a bit. Actually, I think it's a little bit down too far. But they're adding this free form movement thing so you can move in any direction with basically the same speed. So if you're running like a ranged weapon, there's a mount chasing you, you could back up and shoot them in theory. Like there's going to be a lot of like these combinations that aren't possible in live that are possible in this PTR. And in general, that like kind of repetitive outpost rush cycle that you go into, I think it's going to feel a lot better. I don't know if things will be solved completely because a matchmaker is still not in place. We don't have a matchmaker yet, but everything else is pretty good in terms of the PTR, and I think it's going to be pretty fun to play. But again, this is coming out in a month, so we have some delay before this actually comes out. So we have controller support. You can't actually change the keybinds according to the devs. You have aim assist that is built into this, which is nice but scary. I'm mostly scary, kind of afraid that it's going to take over the game a little bit, like it does in a lot of other games that have controller support, but it is what it is, and it will open up New World to new player bases in the future when I assume the game gets announced to go to Xbox and announced to go to PS5 in the June update. So that is a kind of a cool thing. You have target friction, so this is going to make it so that you can kind of hit targets easier. You're not going to like fly past the reticle. So like in game, if I was trying to hit like who's someone that's AFK, if I was trying to hit Cheezer here with a like normally, and this is my normal speed, it would slow down a bit when I'm going over him, and then it would pick back up as the idea. So it's a little bit easier to hit targets with the controller. Will this make controllers broken and mandatory for a lot of classes? I don't know, but games that typically have melee combat are typically dominated by a controller. A matchmaker would be very difficult to poorly implement or properly implement, but I think there should be a separate queue for solo queues in groups 3+. I agree, or at least they should be grouped differently, right? When that's done. Like when a matchmaker actually comes out, they need to be finding a balance between like 5 stacks, like 3 stacks, etc. Like you need to balance 5 and 3 on each team with 5 and 3 on the other team, or maybe you don't do 5 and 3, right? Maybe you do 5, 2 and 2, like something like that. But it needs to be balanced in some way, shape, or form in there, or with like a hidden MMR system. Like they have to have something there to balance it though. But other noteworthy things that are coming from this, the freeform movement, we already talked about this a bit, but you're just going to be able to basically run in any direction. Versus right now on the live client, I could run forward, but if I go backwards, I can't run, right? I'm kind of slow. I could run to the right, I could run to the left, but I can't run backwards. So now you're going to be able to move in any direction. It's probably going to feel a lot more fluid and just generally, like, good. Split queues when there's one queue. I mean, there is one queue. That's the idea. You hit one button, but it's going to group you into separate groups. Like, you don't need, like, the fast track line at Disney. Like, it's a little bit more advanced here. We're talking about code. Like, you can be a little bit more fancy with it because of all the other data that's collected, but they definitely could kind of make, like, a fancier algorithm if they wanted to. I'm curious to see how far they go. Like, I don't think it's going to be Overwatch with, like, an MMR-based system or, like, Valorant or League, but, like, we're going to have something there that makes the game a little bit more balanced, and I just like that overall because that's repetitive content that people access all the time, and if that repetitive content is engaging and fun, then that just allows people to enjoy the game more, and you don't really have to worry about having to release a new expedition. Like right now with New World, like every 3 months there's a cycle. At the beginning, you have some sort of patch. This is usually an expedition, and then like the game like actually let's just do this. Like you have your patch, the game peaks, and then it's kind of fun for a bit, and then it just drops off a cliff, and then it baselines, and then you have another patch, and it peaks and drops off a cliff and baselines. Like what you're hoping here is that instead of having these like peaks, like maybe you have your patch, it peaks again, but then it like doesn't really die out completely. You have another patch, maybe more people come back, it doesn't really die out completely, and you actually start to grow the game because people are liking that like engaging repetitive content. Could I be honest? Yeah. Is there anything, or hey, is there anyone on Marama who can roll a piece of footwear for me? Ask Crush. But the reason why stuff dies off so heavily in New World is because the game is so endgame PvE isn't sustainable. Yeah, for what the devs are doing right now, I don't think it is either. Like how mutations work, like it's just like, first off, I don't know if it's like super fun content for a lot of people, to be honest, compared to like other MMOs, because like you look at your modifiers and it's just like not too great. Like it's just like it's more challenging, but it's not like more challenging in a fun way, you know? Like I've been playing a lot of Slay the Spire lately, and that game, when you do more ascensions or you do more levels, like things get like way harder and new mechanics get introduced. Like these don't really, like they're mechanics, but they're like kind of annoying. There's no like just kind of interesting gameplay aspect to it at all. Like I don't know like super good examples of mechanics that could add to New World, but like you think about like Destiny versus New World for the endgame PvE, and it's like night and day. Like Destiny is like super engaging with groups of like 5 to 6, which is like a similar side to New World. Like you have really extreme boss fights. Every player has a certain role and a certain encounter that they have to do. You have to have high-end coordination, and like that stuff is really cool to me. And that's just, New World's like more casual for that circumstance, and it's just like, I don't know, it makes it a little bit less fun in my opinion. Micro, someone that ran a lot of M10s and enjoyed them. I gave my thoughts above. M10s were very sustainable because everything wasn't bound, was way more fun. Plus the shards are actually useful for upgrading OPR gear, etc. I feel like the loot biasing hasn't been helpful either. Like if the loot biasing was good, like, and it was done in a manner where you could actually put it towards useful things instead of like, you know, going in with like Abyss tank setup, Abyss like finisher setup, and being like, oh, I got another rapier here. Like maybe you get a box, you open up the box at the end, and that gives you or you open up the box at some point, that gives you loot according to the stuff you have. Like I don't know, it's just like that part doesn't seem super repetitive to me right now. I'd like to just turn it off sometimes or bias it towards a gear set. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like that part isn't super fantastic. Are you gonna cast a TC supple war tonight? I probably will look at that. Yeah, I think those wars are really fun to look at. I was BMing War a little bit too much that last war though, saying he was worse than Apples. I was just trying to get him angry because I think he does better when he's angry. But anyways, getting into a few other things here. World experience, not too much here, just kind of song-oriented stuff. Some quest stuff got fixed, which is nice. So you don't have like those, might have less of those. I don't know if it's all the bugs, but there's some bugs where people just got stuck in a forever loop, and those are really hard to troubleshoot, and they're like starting to address some of those as well. The AI fixed an issue that caused surrounding enemies to unexpectedly retreat during combat. So there's just like small like little fixes here that are just fixing everything overall. The big one here that everyone's going to be really happy about is High Priest. I don't know how to pronounce that name at all. Osigura or something like that can now be fought at the Blood Sinal and Merc Guard. This disappeared, and I basically made it so that you couldn't get some endgame like crafting gear that everyone needed, and it was really annoying. But they added that back in, which is really awesome. Some people are really upset they deleted that though, and kind of rightly so. But it's back now, so that's good. Some various expedition kind of changes to kind of rebalancing for some of these things, or kind of fine-tuning some glitches, which are nice. Outpost Rush, we have some really big changes to Outpost Rush that are noteworthy. We are implementing the following changes to address the ongoing feedback regarding OPR gate strength, which is why everyone calls it Door PR is the nickname for OPR right now. While still be mindful of PvE players who prefer to focus on building up fort structures, we'll continue to monitor feedback on this topic and consider further changes as necessary. So they added a 50% weakness for siege damage to fort gate doors, allowing siege weaponry, i.e. powder kegs, to deal more bonus damage to these structures. The thing with this is, like, your powder keg before was hitting for like 50k, right? Now instead of hitting for 50k, it's going to be hitting for 75k. Each door has approximately 180k HP, which means that you could effectively get a door down with like 2.5 powder kegs, which is a lot better than like 3.5. So that's a really nice change. Reduce the strike / absorption of fort gate doors from 10% strike, 20% slash to 0% for both. So basically this means that you're going to be doing a lot more damage to gates. You got to remember this is a multiplicative factor too. So even though it says 10% and 20%, this is closer to probably 15%, closer to 25%, maybe even 30% in reality in terms of a damage buff. So you're going to be able to do more damage to those gates as well. Also, they're increasing the build time and repair time for the gates by 25% for the T2 gate and 50% for the T3 gate, which is fantastic. So they're going to be repairing, like half as fast. So instead of repairing for whatever 180 divided by 8 is, because that's what it kind of was before, now this is going to be like divided by 16. So basically they're repairing half as much HP per repair as they were before, which is a really, really big deal. A slash damage doing 20% more damage is huge too. Yeah, no, these are all like really, really, really big changes for Outpost Rush that are basically just going to make it so that you're not stuck behind a door for minutes on minutes at a time. There's a chance like you still will be stuck behind a door. So you're like 1v5 or something like that, and you're able to live that and just hit the door versus PvEers. You are not going to be breaking that door. But say that you have 10 and you're 10v2. Yeah, you'll be breaking that door. Like, if you're like a 5v2, you'll probably be able to break that door. The big thing with this that I think a lot of people don't capitalize on is generally you want to be taking the fights to the door and be hitting the door passively during a fight, which is something that's done in war all the time, where you see people say, fight on the gate, fight on the gate, if people drop, so that people that drop down, have to fight on the gate as well. You do damage to the gate and the players. As long as people are doing that, I don't think that door PR will be as big of a problem. That being said, I don't expect people to do that because generally people do not have that kind of insight. What I don't get is why people don't use kegs. Kegs are really good. They have 30k HP in OPR. They have 7k HP in war. So kegs feel really, really good in OPR right now, and they're going to feel even better next patch. The thing is the way they feel good right now is you can get a lot of kills with kegs that are really cheesy. They're relatively easy to acquire. Next patch, it's going to be a thing where it'll actually do decent damage to doors, and it can get kills. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. I think it's putting OPR in a relatively good spot next patch. I still think the resource gain is too strong. Like, I still think that is kind of too strong, especially for the ore side of things. But if they were to nerf the ore side of things, I'd just overall be really, really happy. But even with this, I think this is generally the right direction for door PR, and we'll be fixing that for the most part here. Playing near the door in OPR, you know how crazy that sounds? Yeah. Well, especially if you're a range player. If you're a range player, you can't do it. But if you're a melee player, you probably should be doing that. Combat changes. But that's the play. Yeah, exactly. Like, you should be doing that. But it's like people don't do that. Like, people just don't play near the doors right now. Combat changes here. These are relatively big. So when you look at New World on the live patch, this is what the devs are trying to address here, which might be a little bit hard to see at first. But you look at all of this, and it's just like a bunch of visual clutter for what light is, what medium is, and what heavy is. And from like a new player perspective, like, this is kind of overwhelming. It's like, why does medium have 6 passives? It's like, okay, we'll take those 6 passives on medium, and we'll cut it down to 4. Like, that is just inherently a lot easier to understand, and that's what the devs are looking for with this change. In general, this is nerfing damage across the board. Is the damage nerf significant? In my opinion, no, because base damage is so high right now, and this is a base damage effect. It's not a base damage modifier that is going to be coming here. So what's happening here is light is going to have 15% bonus damage. This is down from 20%, so I'll put 20% on the right here for what it is on live. You have medium. Medium is going from 10% to 0%. So that is a 10% nerf. Light, you have a 5% nerf. And then you look at heavy here, and that should be red. And heavy is going to negative 15%. Oh, wait, I did this wrong. That 10% here should be on the right. And that should be 0%. Oops. this is 10% of what it was, and then its medium is going down to a 0%, and then heavy is going let's get rid of that. Heavy is going from 0% to -15. So damage is getting nerfed from a heavy side, minus 15% damage, medium side minus 10%, light minus 10%. But I don't think medium is getting nerfed 10% damage. It effectively is, because right now it is getting boosted by 10%. And then what they're saying here from the medium side is everything is going to be put to 0 across the board. And they're specifically talking about the base damage there. So medium is going to 0%, I believe. So it's not really a 10% damage nerf, though, because of how a base damage works in New World, because it's a super overused mod in general. This is probably going to be closer to a 5% nerf for medium, probably closer to around a 7 to 8% nerf for heavy, and closer to around a 2% nerf for life. So light, that's like generally worth about half as much as what it says, because most builds are at around 100% base damage passively. That's just how the math works out. But it is significant for some builds. The question here is, does this change the meta that heavy is doing less damage than medium by 15% now, comparatively on that patch compared to live, which is 10%? And I think the answer is no for most builds that run a shield. But if you don't run a shield, those new heavy legs are super interesting to run from a disruptor standpoint, and you could still go medium here. So you can get more damage, you can be relatively tanky, and you can have good armor class. If you really want to live, though, armor class is like the best thing in terms of mitigating damage right now passively within New World while you're being healed. So if you're in a spot where you're being healed pretty consistently, I think heavy still makes more sense. Your damage decrease is not super significant. You're looking at 5 to 10% roughly, and that overall is just going to allow you to live better, do more damage, and I think it's still going to be a Bali meta, but there's some builds that might change a little bit and slide down from heavy to medium. A few things that are like interesting here to look at. IGVG is one that a lot of people talk about every single patch. Like, will IGVG go down to medium? I don't think so for this kind of change. Spear, I think, could go down to medium, and then you drop the SNS potentially if you actually have good enough tracking with these spear abilities, and you have something else that can be used to escape. For example, if you go a spear rapier, I think you could do that in medium very effectively next patch. I think you could do spear BB pretty effectively next patch as well. That would be something that you could go for medium. A Great Axe Warhammer, obviously going to go medium still. Some people have been running it in heavy. I think at this point you probably want to go down to medium. And that just overall is like kind of the path of like where things go. Micro Spear Rapier does not threaten war heroes, too little stagger. It's not used to threaten healers. The way that Spear Rapier is built right now is it is used as a medium class to threaten bruisers. People put thwarting counter on the build. Spear inherently has a thwarting counter built into the kit, and then you just do 40% more damage to every target that has grit, and turns out bruisers have grit. So you do 42% more damage because it's 22% from the thwarting counter on top of unerring precision. You throw on pen backstabs. You throw on, I forget the last perk that people typically use, but it's just as a very easy way just to do a lot of damage to bruisers and still be able to be in that fight because you're still in medium. If you're in light there, you can get forced out a little bit easier, and you really can't take that duel as much versus the bruisers, especially because light now has this new passive CC bonus, which is going to make it so that if you're in light, you can get staggered very easily. Remember, you can only run 4 freedom. You can't run freedom artifact on light because it's a heavy artifact. So effectively, you can't be out of combo range on light anymore. The combo range to get out of is roughly 40% passive freedom that you need. And you can get that from 4 freedom in medium, or you can get that from approximately like 2.5 to 3 freedom in heavy. Usually people just go to 3. Light loadout is clearly winner here. Thoughts? I think the main thing with light is like it seems like it's getting a big buff, but you have to remember that this CC duration is like if you get caught in light, you are so dead next patch. Like if you get stunned in light, like you are gonna get comboed, you're gonna get set up, and you can get deleted very, very quickly, and that's the thing that's like very sketchy. Medium looks like a weak version of heavy. Yeah. I think medium is still a little bit worse than heavy, but it's like you have benefits to medium now that I think you haven't had in the past with the 50 stam dodge. You'll do 15% more damage versus 10%, so it's like it has some things going for it. I still think heavy overall is the strongest, but light is in a pretty strong spot. It's just the thing to keep your eye out for is like this 10% incoming CC status effect duration, which basically means if you're not running Stoneform and light, like you have to be really, really careful. If you're running Stoneform, you could be less careful. The other thing that I think works with this, but someone correct me if I'm wrong, is 300 Dex passive. Weapon swapping will cleanse all stun and root crowd control effects. I'm pretty sure that works with stuns. It says it works with stuns. From what I know, it works with stuns, but I just haven't tested it in game. So it's just like you can find a way to live with that as well as with Stoneform, and maybe you just don't go freedom for light anymore. And that frees up perks to go versus other effects. Yes, it works versus stuns. Okay, cool. So it's like, yeah, light like has the potential to be very strong here. You're kind of locked in the Stoneform, I think. But you have like you're playing with fire a little bit. If you get caught with light, it seems like you have the ability just to get pressured out. Things that do very well versus light, which will be interesting to see on the combat code. Typically, if you have Leaping Strike, this is a way for heavy and medium players to catch up to light builds very consistently. It applies a slow. When you hit a light player, they inherently get a slow put on them from for 1 second after taking a melee hit. Dodge distance are reduced by 20% and you can't run. But light also gets a big buff here because of the freeform movement. So right now on the current patch, say I had let's put on a fire staff here. Say I had a fire staff and I wanted to hit someone while moving backwards. That would look like this. On the next patch, like this is as fast as I can move backwards, right? Without turning around, and I can be going like this and like throwing in an auto or something like that. Next patch, that's going to be the speed of like just running. So you're going to be able to create more distance than you were able to at the current patch or in the next patch, which means it's even more important to do what's called pre-moving, which is like if I see a melee is coming for me, like I want to be moving while I'm hitting them, creating distance while I'm hitting them, and just continuing to do that with next patch and just seeing if that can allow me to like live longer. 10% incoming status won't do a thing. I'm playing light for 2 months anyway. If it was 20% incoming, it would make people pick between light and medium. Yeah, I think that's something I'm gonna like look at and see how it needs to get balanced. Because heavy, on the other hand, which is noteworthy here, is at 20% a decrease, and then light is a 10% increase. So like if they wanted to balance this out completely, it'd be 20%. I imagine they tried 20%, and it just felt like kind of oppressive, so they moved it down to 10. But that's a lever that they definitely could change. But I think the meta, like from what we see, is going to be similar to the current meta, where it's going to be do you go for heavy or do you go for light? And then there's a few more builds that go for medium over heavy, but I think it's still going to be dominated by light and heavy overall. OPR wise, definitely going to be dominated by light. War wise, probably going to be dominated by heavy. 3v3 kind of can go anywhere, but usually 3v3 historically is dominated by either light builds or like heavy disruptor oriented builds, and there's not much of an in between. Like Red Axe Warhammer doesn't work as well, but you could still go for medium spear in 3v3, for example. They fixed some other errors here that are less, like, they're annoying errors, but I think they're less impactful. Anything here super important. The Bile Bomb thing is pretty important. A Bile Bomb before didn't apply an outgoing healing reduction, which could change the war meta, so you drop a Bile Bomb on healers before you crash, because that's going to reduce the healing done by 15%, and it's basically a way to kind of have that passive pest that we're kind of missing now, because pest has been nerfed a few times, just to dump that on a healer and then go for a clump. Like, that's a very good thing to go, and I think that could make an impact for the kind of anti-healer meta in particular, because you can just dump that on a healer. That will apply an exhaust as well, that will apply a slow, and then that just overall, that's the wrong kind of bile. I have the life-stealing one on. But crippling bile, you apply a slow, you apply exhaust, and that can allow you to catch up to a healer, and it will apply a disease, which is good. So like all around, good bug fix from the bile perspective. They updated some tooltips that show that you can kind of cancel out of multi-hit abilities, which is noteworthy, but I don't think it's super impactful. Status effects that have scale stat modifiers over time now behave correctly when the potency of that status effect is changed when it is active. I honestly don't exactly know what this means. One thing that I am hoping that they fix, and I'm hoping this is talking about, but I'm not completely understanding, is that fire staff right now, if you were to go for like a strength-based fire staff build with the Inferno, for example, your dots will still scale with int, they won't scale with strength. I'm hoping that gets addressed here, but that's something that like I don't think is going to get addressed, and something that's going to have to get reported to devs on the PTR, and we'll see how that goes. Other noteworthy bug that still exists that they don't talk about here is that spicy hot pot can be stacked with other foods, so that you can use this with another food, and then you can effectively get 2 of these heal for 1% max of your health every 2.5 seconds. So those are a few things that are kind of noteworthy that they don't mention here in terms of bug fixes for combat, but still overall moving in the right direction and fixing a lot of the bugs that were annoying. Do they mean like Arcane Vortex scaling with focus? That might be the case. I'm a little bit confused on that, to be honest. I probably won't even be able to figure that out what happened tomorrow, but they fixed some bug related to that. Nerf Spear stamina perks give medium hop 40 stand back. They would need to gut Spear to give medium 40 stand back. That medium dodge meta was the most annoying thing to play against. Because people would dodge like 5 or 6 times in a row, and like there were builds that were coming out at the time. It's like, oh my god, you can make an infinite dodge spammy tank build a medium, and it was like the most cringe thing to fight. For Oblivion changes, Sacred's ruining the game. This will help with that change, the Bile Bomb, but yeah, they're not reverting that yet. For people that don't know, there used to be a thing where you dropped the Sacred and they dropped Oblivion over it. It would make it so that you would not be healed until you left the Oblivion and came back in. It's kind of a troll sort of bug that's been fixed a few times. They fixed some related issues with accelerating traps, where it didn't apply a bleed if only the first trap was upgraded. Fixed issues where several haste effects were not being properly extended by the Alacrity perk and a Winged Shoes artifact, which is nice. Fixed issues of bleeds could not be extended past the base duration. That was something I noticed within PvE that was kind of annoying, but that's going to be helpful. All of these are just kind of quality of the life bug fixes. I'll let you guys like read them if you want to read them a little bit more. This one here is kind of big. Enfeebling Maelstrom was not consistently proccing on every single player within a clump, and that is getting fixed. So expect more weakening clumps, expect people's damage and clumps to be lower, maybe a little bit less of these super high nuke situations, but with Cleanse Pot, I think it's still going to be kind of a nukey clump meta for the most part. The number of equipped perks for stacks for shields will now be displayed within the inventory screen, okay? And then the refreshing toast text will say that it works on all consumes, because that was kind of confusing before, because I think it said the healing stuff. A Keenly Jagged change is big tech. Fix an issue with Keenly Jagged bleed could stack up to 3 times if applied via different sources. Oh, that's a big change to PvE as well, because a lot of people use Keenly Jagged in PvE. Oh wow. Artifacts, they increased the amount they can have in progress from 5 to 10. My response is, why is it 10? Why is it not infinite? If there's some sort of server issue with that, I kind of understand it with being like too complicated, but I feel like it should not be too complicated, and I don't see a reason to cap it. That being said, 10% is a lot more reasonable than 5, and definitely is moving in the right direction. Wind Chill will get the life steal effect, which is nice. Blunderbuss will, or the pestilence on the Blunderbuss will, the blighted enchantment thing will actually be reduced by Invigorated now. This was ignoring that before. The only other thing within the game that ignores it right now, as far as I am aware, is Bile Bomb. Bile Bomb, I believe, ignores it. And the weird thing with Bile Bomb is it's actually boosted duration by intelligence, but not boosted duration by disease. And that was a bug with Pestilence as well. It was boosted by the intelligence, but not boosted by disease. I don't believe you got quite enough to get 3 ticks with just the intelligence boost. I think you had to do intelligence and dex before, so it wasn't super realistic to hit it. Blunderbuss will continue to suck, and now will suck more. Yeah, I'm surprised there's no Blunderbuss buffs here, to be honest. On top of the Pestilence nerfs, the big Blunderbuss buff that's like, I think in most people's perspective is like, it's a buff, but it's kind of like a yay, but like not like a really like crazy buff, is 350 strength is going to be working with Blunderbuss now, which is nice. 350 strength, for people that weren't aware, was not working. This increases your base damage to abilities in the final attack of a melee light attack chain. So, I mean, it's something. Is that Keenly Jagged fix implying that if it's stacked up to 3 times from different players, or from different weapons of the same player? I think it's 3 times from different players. It's hard to get it 3 times from the same player unless you're doing PvE with extensions on bleeds. What about the Magnify change? You can lock the attributes. Doesn't that mean you can run a lot more Magnify now? Yeah. That's a really, really big change that I was going to talk about near the end here, but we could talk about it now. Magnify, what they're going to be changing with this is, instead of just having this Magnify option, you're going to have the option for your Magnify to be applied towards the highest attribute, or you choose the attribute individually. So I could, per se, apply all my Magnify towards Constitution, and then I could change my stats up with that of my other gear pieces to fit around that, and my food bonus, which they're also changing next patch to fit around that. So I could be in a spot where I am, able to run like maybe 250 con, 200 strength, and like 50 dex or something like that, where you're not able to run that in the current patch. And it also opens up the possibility for a lot of Magnify sets to be used. The main one that sticks out to people, I think, is Frigid Dawn. That is considered to generally be the best Magnify set. It's not best in slot for all builds, in my opinion, but it's a very good Magnify set with Enchanted Ward and Elemental Aversion on there, and you can run that for a lot more builds than you were able to before. K-On2, thank you for the raid. We are going over a lot of the changes that are coming out tomorrow. A new road buddy, it shows max stacks of 3. If that changed, then it won't stack 3 times anymore. Oh, for the Kingly Jagged. I see. But yeah, Magnify is kind of crazy to see change, because then your artifacts, like, you don't have to worry about the maximum number of artifacts they can run for certain builds. Like, that was super awkward for a lot of builds as well. Like, you had builds that were going like 200, 200, 200 instead of doing something more ideal. Like for Spear in particular, you typically go for 300 dex, you go for 100 strength, you go for 200 con. Like, you're going to be able to do that with more Magnify pieces now. You don't just have to run artifacts to do that. Which is nice, because 3 artifacts is like 102 Magnify, and that was like a weird situation that you ran into a lot. Also means that people could stop sending me messages on trying to ask for permission to edit my Magnify calculator, which I made a while ago, which is nice for me, because I'm still getting emails for that, like 3 months after I made that, maybe 4 at this point. So that's great. Weapons, Blunderbuss, the fixed an issue where Blunderbuss grenade detonated. If it's done in a precise moment, it can hit it and hit a wall. This plague splitting grenades will spawn behind the wall. I imagine this worked in OPR and no one knew about it. I didn't realize that was a thing. Explain the claw shot last part. Fix an issue with claw shot. Root effect could be reduced to a low enough value that it would break the ability's functionality. So if someone's not, like, if they effectively have enough passive freedom, you can claw shot to them, but you wouldn't be able to catch up to them by the time they started moving. So it probably would break claw shot altogether. So now it's like, if you have tons and tons of freedom, you'll still be able to catch up to people with claw shot. It's that idea. Adjusted claw shot's root effect duration to prevent modification by duration modifiers. Yeah, so like freedom, exactly. So like, if you have freedom, that won't affect claw shot anymore. If you're heavy, that won't affect claw shot. So you're going to be able to actually catch up to people using the claw shot. So you can actually, like, do things with that ability. Reduce claw shot's base duration from 1 second to 0.7 seconds to compensate for the reduced flexibility in fixing the above issue. Okay, so they're trying to balance that out, but that's the idea behind it. Claw shot ability and player honing now work against the War Blossoms and Artemis encounter. Okay, that's a specific thing that I do not know off the top of my head, but that's cool. Bow, this one's really big. Fix an issue where bow heavy attacks are sometimes being treated as light attacks. Heavy attacks are coded as light attacks. The thing that this changes that's really interesting that a lot of people are talking about is, like, do you ever go for Spear, go for 50 strength, go for a bunch of dex, and then run that with bow with Venom? Because Venom, for people that have seen this artifact, or people that haven't seen this artifact, I guess is more so who this is applying to, will allow your heavy attacks with either weapon to be doing poison, doing 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. I don't know if this is 20% damage per tick for 5 seconds, or if this is 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. I think it's the latter, but it could be the case where you're just doing double your damage over time. But 20% over 5 seconds, and assuming it ticks once per second or something like that. So, like, basically it just makes it so that bow's going to hit really, really hard, but this is a build that can be kind of caught up to. But with the changes to freeform movement and light, this might be a really dominant build that you just can't easily catch up to with Venom on Spear, and then you just go for bow. You mainly play for the bow, but you can go for Venom in key situations. That will be interesting to see how that develops, though. That's the main thing that is happening from that perspective with the bow side. Fire Staff, fix an issue or trial by fire ability could affect targets through gates and structures. Okay, bug fix. A mana regen doesn't apply when flamethrower is active. Nerfing out Smolder Kitten a bit more. A Smolder Kitten at this point, I think, is just outclassed by Spear, but it's still a good build for OPR, still a good build for open world, still a good build for 3v3. It's still annoying, but I just think it's outclassed by other builds. Nice thing about it, it's a really easy build to play, and it's still a very solid build to run. And I think it will still be a solid build to run next patch. The other thing you can try too is you can go for the Great Axe, so you can get a haste every time you apply a hit. so you can actually catch up to people with that. But I think that's a little bit off meta to use the Great Axe more as a utility. Does it mean no mana off of crits? To be honest, I wish Flamethrower couldn't crit. No, this is your passive mana regen. So if you're using Flamethrower, like if I'm using Flamethrower, my mana is still passively going up while it's going down right now. It's kind of hard to see from the bar, but it's actually going up and down at the same time. This is going to make it so it just goes down. So that's the only change there. It's not going to affect the crits at all. Flail modified the radius of the effect of Better Together ultimate ability. It will now vary depending on the player's equip load. Light is 5 meters, medium is 4, heavy is 3. Dude, when the SNS aura changed from 3 to 4 meters, that was a huge change. This is a really, really big change to Better Together. The problem is Better Together just doesn't heal for anything. It's 16% weapon damage every 3 seconds of a heal. If this was buffed, this would be significant, but I don't think it's as significant because it just doesn't heal that much. Like, if this is 4 meters right now and it's 3% on life for heavy players, no one's going to change from heavy to medium. But people might be more inclined, especially with the new heavy medium pant that gives you more HP, to try medium again, along with this new change with kite shields, where there are some kite shields that were classified actually as round shields before. There's one that drops in Evan's Guild that I've been pointing out that has a slash shield ward, has slash shield ward, has thrust shield ward, and sturdy. Then you can run that with a strike protection amulet, and then you can effectively run a 20 to every physical category and 15 to every elemental category split, which is super, super, super tanky as a flail, and that will be interesting to try either in light or medium, whatever people prefer. But that's like one thing that's going to be coming up next patch that will be kind of interesting. Actually, I don't think you could run that in light unless you run featherweight, but it would be an interesting thing to try in medium. But it's like still going to be the same effective radius in medium as it is in the live patch, and this is already like a weak part of flail, so I would not play for this. I'd still play for heavy. Heavy's just better. Like, and this is considering the change, it might be worth it to actually drop that heavy ultimate now, or like drop that ultimate in heavy and go for another utility perk for a lot of those classes, which will nerf the heals of flail and nerf the ult charge of flail, but I don't think it'll be super, super significant. And to fix an issue with Door of Night shield wasn't functioning at the kite shield portion of the Ironclad Superiority Arcane Smith upgrade. Okay, so that's a specific call out to one of the shields that was fixed. For some reason, they are pushing hatchet ranged. Yeah, that hatchet artifact's kind of weird. And they also have this one down here. Let's talk about Great Axe first, though. Adjusted base Whirlwind to be able to do 4 spins without stopping by default, and only the upgrade requires hits for the additional 5th, 6th, and 7th. The problem with Whirlwind is it doesn't do damage, so the fact that you could spin more doesn't affect anything, in my opinion, because it doesn't do damage. It's not going to do damage next patch. It's not doing damage this patch, but it can gap close a little bit more, so maybe it's good for getting out. Big buff. Hatchet. Increase the damage from 140 to 150% for the infected throw ability, so trying to push the hatchet range, as we're just alluding to. Increase the debuff duration extension from 20% to 25%, and a damage per buff from 3% to 4% for persistent hindrance ultimate ability. Okay. They're pushing the damage. Increase the range damage from 20 meters to 20% to 25%. For the hurdling force passive ability, so from farther range, we're going to be a bit more damage. Fix an issue with Berserk ability was triggering an additional stun reaction after cleansing a stun with Berserking Purge. So overall, Hatchet just getting better. So with Artifact Hatchet has a 50% extended duration. Yeah, that's okay, the sleeper thing about Hatchet that we don't know yet is with this combat rework, Hatchet might actually hit things. Like, you know how right now, like, you can't hit anyone with Hatchet? If the change is like what the spear looks like on that patch, you are going to be able to hit people with Hatchet. And if you could hit people with Hatchet, Hatchet has really, really sleeper good damage right now. And I could definitely see someone figuring out something to go for, like, Raging Torrent, like some cheese, like, melee build with it. Range with Hatchet, I'm still not completely sold on, but with the artifact, like, maybe Infected Throw setup, and you can just kind of do something with that. I thought it had Defile on it. Yeah, it does have Defile on it for the Hatchet as well. So it's like, it's a very debuff-oriented thing. As long as you're hitting people with debuffs, you're going to be doing significant damage, but you're still not really doing significant damage with the right tree, in my opinion. But it's better than it is on the live still. usually in regards to ranged weapons, hatchet on the right tree is considered just to be worse than bow, and there's not enough utility from it at the current moment for it's super used. Social distancing is a fantastic ability though. Rending throw is pretty good, but not super good. Infected throw is a really good ability as well, so maybe this gets pushed enough to where this actually gets used again. The thing I'm most interested about, to be honest, is like the melee side of things, because with the improved tracking from the reworked combat code, hatchet could be very sleeper next patch. And you see like light hatchet builds maybe coming back. That would be really, really cool to see, but something we're gonna have to test in the PTR. Throw Rush is dog shit. Yeah, like it just does not hit anything really right now. About to go crazy with Great Sword Hatchet again if they actually fix the autos. Yeah, like they don't talk about fixing the autos for Hatchet, but considering what they did to Spear, like I think it's gonna be fixed and feel a lot better. You're gonna get 16% damage from the right side passive and 10% from Defile with 5 debuffs. Hatchet, Spear gonna go crazy with the debuffs. I never thought about Hatchet, Spear. That actually could work with right tree. That actually makes a lot of sense to go right tree with that. Yeah, no, that would be kind of crazy if that actually works out that way. And then you can go medium maybe, or you can go light and you can still live. Like that's a really cool idea. That is something that I think is going to be tried a bit next patch, especially because Spear is still so strong. And that Hatchet artifact is just going to make Spear even stronger because all your debuffs are going to have the duration increased. And I believe the debuff thing doesn't call out like invigorated or like specific things. It's every single debuff is lasts 25% longer. So like bleeds would get extended as well, which is something that Spear has a lot of inherent passive to it. Well, not really a lot, but it has some bleeds and like has in general it takes advantage of debuff effects. So that's like a kind of interesting change. Okay, where were we? Run Hatchet. Where can I find Empower Cap Calculator in the Discord? It should be under resources. If you go to the kind of in the Discord here under resources, within here there's different things. I just put like an alt charge spreadsheet out there yesterday for people. I believe there's like a Magnify calculator we're not gonna really care about as much. The all effective buckets, this thing will kind of tell you that. The effective health calculator will also tell you that. The effective health calculator will just tell you everything and just do it on one calculation. If you want to actually look up individual effects, this is a really useful spreadsheet that Mr. Majito TV put together that has every single effect category, and then you can just look up for all of those as well. Or you can look those up on New World Buddy, which also works too. Ice Gauntlet increased the damage of the final 2 meters from a 20% increase to a 25% increase. They're trying to push Wind Chill. Wind Chill still sucks. They took the thing off the artifact Ice Gauntlet. Everyone was super happy because they didn't have to run Wind Chill, and no one is running Wind Chill still. Will Wind Chill be good after this? Probably not. Will Wind Chill be good if it's like Flamethrower and has no cooldown? Probably. Should they make Wind Chill have no cooldown? I don't know. But like I feel like you have to go that direction if you want Wind Chill to actually be good. It's just like kind of toxic to be able to forever push people back. So I feel like that's like a little bit broken. But like I don't think Wind Chill is still good enough to really be used too much. Wind Chill ability will not impact sounds while hitting environmental surfaces. Okay, it's going to sound cooler. Increase the damage of Spike Trail from 56 to 71%. Doesn't really matter. And it increased the slow duration effect from 2 to 4% for the Frozen Touch ability passive. That is a really big deal. Frozen Touch is the passive where if you're full HP and you get hit, you slow a target. This is already taken by basically every IGVG. Now if you're full HP, you have the IG out. You apply a 25% slow for 4 seconds. That's a really long duration, actually. Like, it's already taken, it's still going to be taken. I don't know how much it's going to really affect the gameplay class as a whole, but it's like could be a good boost for IG, for sure. Life Staff. They updated the targeted healing option descriptions to enhance clarity. Okay. Updated target self UI prompt when using targeted heal abilities now shows when the player is not in a party or a raid group. All these are just kind of quality of life. Fix an issue with glowing focus passive is not extending the duration of Fortify from the Protector's Touch passive ability. That's a positive thing. Life Staff in general, I think, is buffed because of the amulet that's coming out that every Life Staff is going to run. That gives them basically the passive hatchet effect, which is going to allow them to escape clumps, be invulnerable for a second. has a 180-second cooldown, but you still will be able to get out of dodge, pop a health pop, pop a heal, be able to live a decent amount longer. On top of that, Purify and Stamina Recovery is like a really good combo for a healer to have. So I think healer's going to be in a pretty good spot next patch with that new artifact and all this stuff. Musket fixed an issue where the powder shot and powder burn ability cooldowns would reset when traveling through certain surfaces. That's concerning that was a thing. What the hell? Added contextual information for the scent of blood traps upgrade to inform of 1 second cooldown per. Oh my god, I read that completely wrong. Added contextual information for the scent of blood traps upgrade to inform of a 1 second cooldown upon ability cancellation or ability activation. Okay, that makes more sense. But I don't think anyone really used that. They never used it. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna use it still. Get rid of the musket bloom, please, AGS. They get rid of the musket bloom, add an aim assist at the same time where people go zims and they start one-shotting people across the map with the new artifact. Please no. Rapier fixed an issue where swiftness. They're not actually going to one-shot people. I'm just kind of kidding about that. Fixed an issue with the swiftness passive ability cooldown was longer than the duration between flurry of blows, preventing the ability from applying a status effect for each blow. So buff to Rapier. Void Gauntlet, they increased the base damage but compensated with the abilities. This is just going to make it so that your autos just do more damage. This is also going to make it so that Voidblade does more damage. Noteworthy. And with the combat rework, Copium, Voidblade might be good. Is Voidblade good with the combat rework? Does it actually stick to people now? Can you actually hit people with Voidblade? They just buffed the damage 2 times in 2 patches. Voidblade could be sleeper. But betting for Voidblade is always a scary thing. I hope it's fixed. Do I think it's fixed? No. Do I hope it's fixed? Yeah. But it's probably not fixed. One of the first things I'm going to test. Yeah, exactly. Warhammer increases stagger animation duration and stagger duration itself by 5 frames for Path of Destiny Seismic Waves upgrade. So this is just making the stagger even longer, which is scary because it's used a lot in war, but you know, not used a lot outside of war, so it might be helpful in those circumstances. Increased haste duration from 3 to 4 seconds, so they're just buffing the Warhammer. Adjusted the guarded sprint passive ability to work while traversing, i.e. walking, running, and sprinting. So now you don't just have to be sprinting, it will apply all the time. So with Warhammer, you'll just have passive damage reduction. Updated text for Aftershock ultimate ability to better describe the functionality. So Warhammer's getting some buffs here. I don't think there's a spot right now where you ever use Warhammer outside of with Great Axe. Warhammer is really good single target damage, but really sucks at AoE, so it's like a good compilation with Great Axe. You have the potential to try to use it with a different strength weapon. Like, do you ever go for, like, Hatchet Warhammer? Probably not. Probably sucks. Do you ever go for Spear Warhammer? Honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world, but Spear's good at single targets, Warhammer's good at single targets, so it kind of fights itself. So I don't know if there's another weapon where you want to use this outside the Great Axe still, but it's interesting nonetheless. And it's definitely a discussion. Crit Voidblade on point win? Probably never, but it'd be fun if it worked. Voidblade with Mad Gauntlets is pretty fun. Do you even need Mad Gauntlets? Like, I feel like that's overkill with Voidblade. If you're flanking someone you're already critting, just throw on the like Void Darkblade, go heavy, like have fun with it. Like, you're probably not doing damage, but next patch you're maybe doing more damage. Or maybe you have to go medium next patch. You go for the medium heavy legs that you run that gives you a 20% HP bonus. You go for life steal effects, you go Blood Drinker, and then you never die and you have a bunch of HP. Like, I don't know. Like, there's something there with Voidblade. I just don't know if it's quite there yet. Mounts added a small grace period with leaving roads, which is nice for anyone that's doing those kind of quests. Also noteworthy that everyone's probably going to want to do those quests now if they weren't doing them on their other characters or on their main character, because it's going to be applying that speed bonus to OPR, which is really good. Mount attachment faction flags now feature a unique description of text. Okay. Now they're named in the transmog menu. Okay. Killing small prey with the mount now progresses the quest objectives in Everlord's XP. So, like, if you trample a bunny rabbit during the bunny event, which might be a tech, which is kind of sad, but I guess you could just trample those bunnies next patch instead of having to get off your mount and kill them. But these are all like relatively minor fixes to the mount, but it looks like that's going to be improving the functionality altogether. Where does IGVG sit next patch? Back to medium and quads? I think it's still heavy because you have to go for a mag glove still. Like, there's not really an argument to not go for mag gloves at the moment. And if you go for mag gloves, then like you kind of want to have that passive freedom so you don't have to run as much freedom because you're already super limited in the amount of perks you can take. And right now it's more of a util class, not a damage class. There's some people that argue going for medium is better because then you can spam dodges. The people that argue for that have not played IGVG and are talking about IGVG kits, and it typically feels better just to go for like a dodge to tomb and to dodge and a dodge rather than going for a triple dodge and medium in my experience. Because even if you go for a triple dodge, you're going to want to tomb at the end here and then go for another dodge anyway in most cases. So like typically just not super likely to see it go back to medium from what I've seen, but it could. I think a lot of people try it though. The 48 attribute feud change is triggering. It's triggering to me. I kind of get it now though. The idea here for people that don't know, so they're changing it so food is more expensive to get because you actually have to get fish because fishing is effectively dead. So now you actually have to fish. The problem with that is you have to fish and people don't. Well, okay, this is bipolarizing. I feel like there's less people that are fishing than there are rabbit hunters, and there's less bots that are fishing than there are bots rabbit farming, which also means that prices of food will go up, which is not ideal for a lot of people, but that money is going into circulation in the new world economy. Which is better than the change that or the thing that they're compensating with, where the respec cost is going from 200 to 50 at this patch. Con food doesn't need fish. Yeah, but if you're gonna have Magnify on your gear, you're probably gonna put the Magnify towards con, and then you have con food on top of that, and you're in a spot where you have tons and tons of con. So it's like the con food in general is going up in price next patch. So it's like a good thing to kind of acquire now, but it's like that's a little scary for me with the Magnify change. The con food is going to be the cheapest food, but it's also going to be really abundant. If you want to make a lot of gold right now, acquiring a con food is really good. Also acquiring food that's going to be transformed, that's a hybrid food from its primary attribute to the 40 con variant is a decent way to make some gold, but honestly that food is like pretty cheap to get at this point in time. What's the new con food though? I think they talk about it up here at the top. Where did they talk about it? Coconut has replaced seasoning blend for the banana parfait T5 raw AE con food. So it's still the banana parfait. According to this part, but then I think in a different part they talk about how Dex stuff. No, it's banana pudding. Banana pudding is different than banana parfait. Okay. So yeah, banana parfait is the con food next patch. So that's the food that you like generally want to be getting. And that's something that you can probably make gold on between now and next patch and during next patch, because that's going to be the main food that people are going to be using, because fishing is probably not sustainable from an amount gathered perspective. They're also, according to the dev video, changing fishing, so you basically have to hit hotspots with your luck stuff to get the access to that high tier fish. The other noteworthy thing is that people are pushing their luck while they're fishing and are looking for hotspots. They're probably going to be PvP flagging because that gives plus 30 luck, right? Which is a relatively large amount of luck, which means that you could also flag up and grief them if you want to, but that's kind of forbidden tech, and also I'm sorry for any PvEers that are going to be fishing that just get caught out in grief because they're flagged because you need the luck to get your fish now. Micro TI5 rotate isn't 48, it's 44, so it won't be banana. So do we not know the con food? What is the con food called? It's AE? Where's AE on this? This is AE. AE is the max tier food. According to this, because the 48 dex food has raw AE. And then here it says raw AE. You know what Micro does when he's not streaming now? I don't grief all the people, but it's something that you could do. I think it would be roasted rabbit if it's the same as the dex duration. Check season 5 values. It's live food. You have to check season 5 values, not current. Where do you check season 5 values? Right, E equals Rise of Angry Earth. Oh. Even though that food has plus 48 dex, it's not the same for everything. Right below this part here, the potency adjustments, where they adjusted the potency of T5 foods to better balance all the options and progression. These changes aim to address the decreasing value of legendary fish since the Brimstone Stands update. It's right there, Mikro. You're saying right there, but you're not saying where it is. Most recipes have been changed to provide 3 meals instead of 1. Below? Okay, I'm going down. Tell me where to stop. Tell me when to stop. Is it here? It says current values. Okay. I think we found it. Hey, what did I miss? Everything. Season 5 values reordered to highlight the intended progression. This is just for Dex, though, right? It shows both the current and new values. Nerf duration, too. Yeah. Dex's example. So then what's the con food? Because that's the only food I care about. Or am I supposed to know the answer to that question? Because I don't know anything related to food. Rabbit? It's really rabbit? Most people assume it will be rabbit. So did rabbits go up in price? This is where I bait everyone and buy all the food right in front of you from the server. Oh yeah, they did. You straight rush to the market? Oh, I'm buying 70. I don't care. Alright, going back to this. I'm tired of it being rabbit. You gotta go farm your rabbits, man. You know, like the Stanley is gonna be butchered over and over and over again, but he has a purpose. Rabbit gonna be 48 stats? That's what we're saying. Yeah. So, Rip Stanley. Lost but not forgotten. Gonna be dying a lot next patch. But that's the con food. So, like, that food that you're getting from the event too, I'm pretty sure that is the food that's gonna be the new food, right? Like if I look at the Dex food here, like the fried something or another, fried albiendaja. Like that's the stuff that you get from this event, and that's gonna be the 48 stat food, right? Why would that be? I mean, that's just looking at their example. Because this fried food here, like, for example, is like, that's the same time that the rabbit food came out. Because it's only vanilla tier 5 food without the fish. Yeah. It, like, has to be by deduction. The way I read it, the 48 con food will either be using fish or a tenderloin gremulata, which you need the fish for still. I thought they said in the dev video that the T5 would not involve fish for con, but everything else would involve fish. So will the 48 food be going away? To be honest, I don't understand what happens with the current 48 food. I think it gets downgraded from what I see. Yeah, there'll be 44 in season 5. Yeah, so it'll be 44 from 48. So it will get downgraded a bit. But then that old 40 food is getting buffed to 48. So what happens to the 48 stat food? The current 48 stat food. So if you have 48 stats from your food, this is going to be decreased to 24. Or 24. To 44. I just had a stroke there for a second. Jesus Christ. So yeah, the 48 turns into the 44, and then the 40 turns into the 48. Neural database item con food T5B. Is this just... So you think it's going to be this? This is involved. Well, it doesn't involve fish directly. Uh, I guess you have options there. I don't know which one it's going to be for the con food. Most likely that than rabbit. Fish sauce. Yeah. Well, no, tomorrow morning, I guess. LOL. Yeah, it's just if you want to try to beat the market. It's brimstone sand food. If that's the brimstone sand food, then brimstone stands is this 40 example, right? Brimstone is under 40. So that wouldn't be brimstone. Like that would be the 40. So no, it should be the rabbit. Because this is brim. So 48 should be rabbit for con. Yeah. That's the old ones, man. Go down. Rabbit is released food, if I remember correctly. And then they're saying where are they putting released food? But isn't this released food for the Dex example? For the season 5? Because Brim. Oh, I see what you mean. I was looking at old. Yeah. Brim is 40 on the new, and then the new Rise of Angry Earth is 44, and then the old stuff is 48. Would that involve the fishing? Old 40 foods will now be new bis, which means rabbit, con food, new bis. Yeah, exactly. So any 24 con plus 16 any stat will be converted to the 48 con food. Yes. So any. Okay, that's a big deal to note as well. If you have a main stat food that's a split, uh, you can make that 48 food right now and make a bunch of gold. So, for example, like one that I like to do in the past, for what is it called? Like if you go to the TP here, like just to give an example, and you were to go to attribute boosting foods, and you were to go to int, for example, if you cared about int, and you wanted a hybrid food like fillet and mushroom sauce, this gives 24 int and 16 dex, right? This will be converted to be 48 int food, which is why the price has gone up so much. Okay, so someone's figured this out before us. But this is still cheap, so I can buy all this. You guys are too slow. You gotta do this while I'm figuring it out. If you're on cost, you do not get this. I don't think it will. Hope so, because no fish used. Yeah, but this is the idea. So all this like stuff that you would see under the int category is going to convert it to the pure int version. So this, for example, will be converted to pure int. Someone figured that out 3 minutes after the notes went out. Yeah, but I'm slow when it comes to cooking because I don't do cooking. But like if you're making any of this food right now, that might be a bargain. And then you could sell it next patch, for example. And if you have 48 food, it's going to lose value. So why are you buying food so much? Because that's going to be converted. That food right there, that was 17 gold each, is going to be converted to 48 int food that requires legendary fish to get. So it's like, can you convert a food to 48? Yeah, you can convert. Hybrid food will get converted to the main attribute of T5. So if you stock up on food, then that should get converted to T5. You sure about it? In the dev video, they mentioned that hybrid food will be converted to the main attribute at a T5 level. I do not know if that means the base level. Like, I don't know if this is the gamble part. I don't know if this will get converted to 48 int, or if it will be converted to 40 int, or if it will be converted to 44 int. TI5 equals 40, though? Okay, so it'd be 40 int food? Don't give people something for 5 months and then take it away. Remove split attribute foods upon login. Any split attribute food will be in your inventory will be converted to a single attribute food of the same tier. They said that will be converted to the higher stat, I think. That's the question right now. Is does it get converted to the higher stat? Because that's the part that I don't think we exactly know. But it's a 40 stat food. Yeah, but if this is a 40 stat food, how does it convert to 48? This is a 40 stat food, right? And then effectively, the 40 stat foods that are 40 right now get converted to 48 next patch. but 40 stacks will be 48 stats. Yeah, that's the logical that's like the logical deduction that comes from it. It's like, does this food get converted to 40, and then that 40 food gets converted to 48? We have to check this out on PTR. I don't think you'll be able to check it out on PTR, right? You won't be able to replicate the condition. Because you won't be able to get glazed bear with sauteed vegetables on the PTR. I'll wait for the PTR. This is so confusing. And the current 48 stats will be 44 stats, and Brimstone 40 stats will say 40. Can we get food from boxes? Yeah, you can. And it will be the old boxes, so it should automatically get converted, but knowing AGS, it won't automatically get converted. Cook it. The cooking recipe should be gone. If they're smart. If they're not smart, it's still there. The problem is you have to manually farm all the cooking recipes on the PTR. So that's also not a great solution. And the patch says that Dex Con food will convert to Dex. Adjusted how Magnify? No. Let's look for the other convert. Upon login, any split attribute food in inventory will be converted to the single attribute food of the same tier. For example, if you have T4 Dex Con food, you'll have T4 Dex food after the patch. The same logic as implied to cooking recipes. So you have to try to go from this to that conclusion. I would think if the hybrid food was from the original expansion, it would be converted into the original expansion, or like the original expansion, the original game's T5 food, which would be 48 stats. Oh yeah, I forgot AGS is like that, testing new updates, but will likely give us what we need to test. Yeah. So it's a buff for vanilla food, nerf for expansion food, and make trash for Brimstone food because it's a bit more expensive to crash, but almost no one cares about 40 food. Yeah. And the 48 stat food will be the legendary fish ones. Yeah, so that's the gamble, right? It's like, do you take the gamble on making this cheap food right now? Because it might turn into 48 food? For me, probably. You try to get a decent supply. Like, try to make that while you can. But that's like a risk that you have to take, and something that the devs might clarify in the Discord at some point. But, kind of to be determined there. Who's fishing a new one in 2024? Rip food market when the patch comes out? I think more people are going to be fishing. This is legit one of the worst buffs to fishing possible, not going to lie. You have to be fishing. Everyone's going to be competing for the hotspots too, according to the recent patch, or the recent dev video that they put out. They added some T4 foods as well. And some T5 foods for the Rise of Angry Earth. But nothing there is the best food. Most recipes have been changed to provide 3 meals instead of 1. They also had their ingredient amount increased to account for the additional meals and bonus craft chance considerations. Okay, this will help to generate more XP for craft, and chefs will benefit from the first life bonus while leveling, as well as increased output from bonus meal chance when crafting at a high level. So, I think this is supposed to be compensation for everything costing more. Gold sellers will be. I mean, you have to find a hotspot though to catch the legendary fish. That's the thing. It's like that's what they're talking about in the video. It's like if you're not at a hotspot, you're probably not going to be catching legendary fish. Loot adjustments drop rates from small loot containers have been reduced from 5% to 2%. Drop rates from large containers have been reduced from 20% to 5%. And the locations of food recipe drops have been changed. Okay, so they're nerfing the drops because they existed in the past, but the old ones are the best ones now. Okay. Cooking was already so easy to level, who cares? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I use cooking to boost levels on most of my characters because it's super fast. The XP boost events for cooking have been increased 15 and 20% depending on their value. Smaller values got a 20% bump, larger ones got a 15% bump. This was done to counteract the loss of the first time craft bonus in many crafts. So it's even easier to get the cooking up. And then we talk about the potency stuff, which we just talked about, where they're changing stuff from this to this, which apparently I can't read. Which is not really a new thing, but oh well. Something I'm still working on. Trade skill, leveling requirements. I don't think this is interesting enough to talk about. Other changes to related to how cooking works. I'll let other people read that if they want to read that, but I don't think it's super impactful personally. So, Beaker, what's the deal with the roasted prismatic fillet, the Magnify food? Oh lord. I think that's a Rise of Angry Earth food. So it should be 40 stats. No, 44 stats that you can apply to the Magnify related attribute, which could be changed for whatever attribute that you want it to be, or it could be using the highest value according to the recent dev video. So it's 44 food, I believe. But I guess we'll see that tomorrow as well. Anything else here super interesting? Some progression stuff that's been changed. The wallet got increased from 500k to 1 mil, which a lot of people are very happy about. I have never hit above 500k, so I do not understand that, but I also have 5 characters, which is why I typically don't worry about that stuff as much, and I don't care too much about my gear. But that's interesting. Artifacts have a pity mechanic. This is the best change for me. I wish it came earlier because I've ran freaking 36 Tempests and got completely burnt out from that dungeon to get the stupid Fiji artifact. But there's a pity mechanic there, which will guarantee a drop after a set number of kills to help those who have extremely bad luck. The thing that they said in the past, so they increased the chance from 10 to 20%, right? They said when this got introduced that they were probably going to back it down from 20% to 10% and then do that with this change. They don't talk about that here, so it might be 20% with this change. Hope for the pity mechanic works on tumblers too from OPR chests. I don't think it will, but I hope so too. I don't think it will though. Means you can run more Magnify is what it seems. Yeah, you can basically run more Magnify. It's a little bit more flexible. Your food slot will likely be the thing that you have to flex a bit more rather than your gear set itself, because your gear set will most likely be put towards con with the Magnify slot. Fix an issue causing prismatic gleamite to disclose that would be removed at the end of the Winter's Convergence event. This item now has proper event attribute and will no longer indicate that it'll leave your inventory. Okay. PvP reward tracks got changed a bit for the early on ranks. Looks like the later on ranks will star medal at the end. So yeah, like these earlier on ranks got changed, but the later ranks are similar, which is noteworthy, but not super impactful, I think. Each tier's rewards have a new minimum gear score requirement for equipment, starting at 650 for recruit. Adventures without Rise of Angry Earth expansion will only have the maximum of 625. Okay. So maybe Star Medal will be 700 gear score, but it'll probably be 690. Star Medal is 695. That would be nice. The mutation system, which would be Star Medal rank, would be 695 to 700. That would be great. Yeah, that would be great if it's that high. I hope it's that high. That drop would actually be useful. I hope that also applies to OPR chests you open, but I don't think it will. Where you get OPR chests that, like, you open it and it's like 670 gear score. It's like, great. And I know they buffed that, but they need to buff it again, in my opinion. Frequency and order of appearance for all rewards have been updated. So these are just random things that you can get. PvP craft mods can now be purchased directly from the reward track, which is a little bit noteworthy. I guess they're not in a pack anymore because they were in a pack at one point. Or they are in a pack right now, is how I'm reading this right now, unless I'm reading it wrong. Artifact appearance frequency has been increased. Don't really know how much that is, but that's needed, which is good. Craft mod types have been reduced for a more optimized selection. So changes here, this is stuff that we'll probably have to look at on the PTR, but I don't really know how it will feel exactly at the moment. Just allows us to upgrade OPR gear with dark matter. Just allows us to upgrade OPR gear with dark matter. Problem solved. Yep, that's what people want, really. But it's not being given yet. Rune glass crafting materials, including gemstone and glist, have been added as a reward option. That's nice. Some new dyes, some new decor. A new level 65 T5 name, weapons, armors, and trinkets. Oh? Nubis? I hope Nubis. Might be Old Bis. Sounds spicy. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. New Predator's trinkets are available at the Star Medal tier and above. Oh? The Azoth salt cost of most rewards has been adjusted to better represent the value of the item. Okay. Fixed an issue that caused that it has that nice devastation spell achievement to be duplicated. I don't think they talked about the bug fix in here for the skeleton emote, right? That gives you the free dodge. At the end here, I don't think they talked about it. That's something else that needs to be fixed. So the skelly thing needs to be fixed still. New food needs to be fixed. The hot pot specifically. That bug is still around from what it seems like. And most of the other bugs are fixed, but those are two that I can think of off the top of my head. Please fix title spam. Yeah, that's a big one. That is not fixed within going between instances of like your own world and the kind of server world where you're going to OPR and stuff. Gear and items, adjusted Magnify. We talked about this a while ago, like at this point, like probably half an hour, 45 minutes ago, but Magnify are going to be able to choose the attribute, which is what the community wanted. You're not going to be able to make everything their own attribute, but very good change. You know, item spam will be introduced when they do cross-server 3v3 since they never learn. Yeah, I'm a little bit hopeful. Like, my expectations for this patch, like, they were here, and now my expectations are like, or like what we actually received is like here. Like, if this is the floor, like I was like not expecting much, but something, and now it's like, okay, this surpassed my expectations from a patch like significantly from a New World perspective, but from a general gaming perspective is about on par with what I would expect. Like, if I'm comparing patches to other games, like, this is, like, what I kind of expect. I think some people are still looking at this and are saying that this isn't content. I think those people are overreacting. I would view these changes as changes that will significantly affect the game and renewable content or reusable content. OPR map or game modes waiting for 2029, I guess. I heard a rumor that that was coming in June, but rumors are often wrong. So, I don't know. I got the Season 3 bug reward after Season 4 and still haven't gotten compensation. Maybe they'll give me those rewards eventually. I think they said they're not going to do it anymore. They forgot about you. We down so bad in New World that this is the above expected patch. Yeah, it is. It is, to be honest. It honestly is above expected for New World. I don't think it's going to bring people back, but it's a good lead up to whatever is happening in June now, because it got extended from from May, which we're expecting console release, as well as like some big update that is kind of unknown. Remove the ability to trade T1 weapons armor. That doesn't really matter. Anything here super impactful. Not super crazy for the most part. Oh, this one's big. Fix an issue where certain kite shields are functioning as round shields. This is a funny one. If you go to New World database, there's a kite shield that everyone likes, that everyone talks about, that has slash shield ward and also has a thrust shield ward. It's called Immutable Resolved. A lot of people like this. The problem is this has the kite shield passive, but now this is, or the light shield passive, but this is now a kite shield, so it's not usable with flail. A really, really good upgrade for all flail users, and there's other shields like this, I believe, as well. Yeah, slash and thrust. So yeah, you can go slash thrust on this, and then you can go for strike on amulet, and then effectively you're warded towards every physical thing by 14 to 15%, which is pretty solid. It's fixed now. Busted shield, hashtag nerf. Yeah, it is kind of a busted shield. The compensation for it is like the worst spot to farm in a game, or it used to be. Did it get moved at all? No. This mob has 400k HP. It's not very fun to acquire. And it happens to be part of a relatively big drop table. So yeah, no, it's not fun to get. I farmed that boss for 3 days to get that shield as solo. God. Yeah, I need to get that shield. I tried to farm that so long ago, but gave up. Yeah, that shield's might be BIS now, to be honest. It's a very good shield. Especially on EU, where spears are more common. NA spears isn't used as much still, for some stupid reason, for most companies, even though spear is insane. Removed unobtainable item appearances from the transmog UI. Oh, man. Or Calcum. Glass Catacomb Void Gauntlet, Glass Catacomb Blunderbuss. Does this mean that the glass shields are now gone? I wanted the glass tower shield, man, but you never actually could get it. A Chain of Zane and Hoop of the Cursed Sun will no longer drop in mutated Laz runs. Okay. Fixed an issue with Weaver Fen side quest rewards. Rewards at the appropriate gear score. So this is stuff from the rework that they missed on the main story quest, kind of. Rebalance pre-expansion materia cost to help leveling players gear themselves. Pre-expansion named item materia crafting costs are now significantly less. This will also move pre-expansion materia crafting into the respective crafting stations so lower level players can access them. So the main thing that I think about with this is there's a few artifacts that are still used from pre-expansion. The main one is Teardrop that I know of. This costs like 3,000 dark matter, pre-expansion materia, and I believe you get around 30 to 50 per normal run. Hopefully this gets lowered to like 1,000. So that would be a little bit nice. Instead of adding glass weapons, they remove the transmog. Come on, bro. True. Well, everyone wants the glass transmog. I don't like the glass round shield transmog, but I think I'm like one of the few. It's generally very popular, and a lot of people like to run it. Wooden coins have been added as a potential drop for higher level players to supply chests to prevent an issue where they would sometimes award nothing. Okay. It doesn't really matter because those are like basically worth nothing anyway. And then there's a few other fixes there that are like less impactful. And then we have information about the PTR. Is there a spot here that has bug fixes? I think there's one spot here that had bug fixes. Oh wait, that's just this, isn't it? Yeah, it was just that. But PTR comes out tomorrow, likely around 7 or like 9 to 10 a.m. PST. That's like usually when it comes out around. So you can get on that and test the stuff if you want to.